This is my first documentary review of the year, my first HBO review of the year. And no, while this isn't McMillions, McMillions will be reviewed on this channel, here on Rich Reviews. Hi there folks, welcome back to Rich Reviews. And my first review of documentaries of the year here is Ali Cavett, The Tale of the Tapes. And this is from HBO documentary films, and HBO documentary films have been on a roll as of late. So this film apparently premiered 2 years ago at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and it's taken 2 whole years for this thing to have aired. Now, again, as I said, HBO documentaries have been on a roll as of late. The one about the suicide texting case, Elizabeth Holden Theranos, Michael Jackson, John McCain, and that one documentary about Just Mercy. And so, lo and behold, sadly, this is not quite up to par with some of the HBO documentaries that I've seen of late. So basically, this is about Ali and Dick Cavett, particularly when Ali went on the Dick Cavett Show during the 60s and 70s. And now here's the thing, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, they're going to show the lives of both Muhammad Ali and Dick Cavett, that's not necessarily the case, because this is basically the biography of Muhammad Ali that happens to go on Dick Cavett Show, and Dick Cavett is interviewed here, but his life is not really covered at all. And outside I mentioned his wife, because Muhammad Ali was staying in his house one time, and his wife called the house. So we got a whole bunch of footage from the Dick Cavett Show. Then, of course, sadly, we get a whole bunch of talking heads, including Al Sharpton, Juan Williams, Malcolm X's daughter for whatever reason, a biographer, and I think possibly a trainer. And these people do not have anything new to say about Muhammad Ali unless you're really into what could they possibly cover now once that Muhammad Ali is gone. So Dick Cavett during the 60s and 70s brought on Muhammad Ali and a whole bunch of other black folks because their voice wasn't necessarily being represented, and Dick Cavett was on ABC, and I guess he was sort of the rival to a certain degree to Johnny Carson, although they did not necessarily share the same time slot. Quite frankly, the best thing about this documentary is the footage between Ali and Cavett on those shows. Now, Muhammad Ali recalls this one time being denied service in a restaurant, and him telling the owner, hey look, go back and tell the chef that Muhammad Ali's here, he won the gold in Rome. And the owner comes back and says, we're still not going to serve you. And that's how Muhammad Ali tells the story, gets a funny laugh from the audience, even though I don't think it's supposed to be funny given the fact that you're denied service. A couple of interesting side things that I think could easily be interesting explored if Muhammad Ali was alive and was able to talk. One of whom comes from Cavett himself, believing that, when Muhammad Ali joined the Nation of Islam, which a lot of people were suspicious of back then, that whenever he spoke about the Nation of Islam in glowing terms, that they believed that he was a mouthpiece for that organization. King Cavett, who is right there in front of the camera, basically believes that. Basically, one person also compares, the Nation of Islam to present-day Scientology because they're such small religious organizations. Now, here's the thing. To me, Nation of Islam is indeed a legitimate religion because, hey, look, it blends Islam with some black nationalism theology. The other, sadly, is just a fraud to begin with, so I don't understand how anyone could compare the two. And obviously, again, we get the same stuff about Muhammad Ali's life, born Cassius Clay, how he defeated Sonny Liston for the title, how he was stripped of his title, how that several-year layoff of being stripped and not being able to box clearly did affect him and clearly shaped the way he performed later on. And how some people believe that after that rumble and jumble with George Foreman, he should have quit while he was ahead because he fought several times afterwards in incredibly worse and worse shape. One time when he goes on the Dick Cavett Show after he gets a brutal beating, he clearly do show that his right side, this side of his cheek is still swollen. Dick Cavett obviously feels it, and he mentions how it feels hard. I think I've mentioned this on a previous review, or maybe bleed for this, how basically it is hard to transcend every sport. Some athletes are able to transcend the sport that they're at. Boxing is the hardest sport. Periodically, you do get a boxer that transcends boxing itself. But that's incredibly hard to do because boxing is such a brutal sport. And then also we got one person who says, yeah, I only met 5 fighters who went out and basically retired after that, because most athletes don't want to retire, or they believe they have one more great game in them, but obviously either their money issues or just unwillingness to accept the fact that they don't want to see their glory days behind them, want to keep playing, and that's a sad reality. We barely do touch on Dick Cavett's life, but I guess on the Dick Cavett Show we do get that very famous interview segment with Lester Maddox, the famous segregationist of Georgia, who went on the Dick Cavett Show and then famously stormed off after being called a bigot by Cavett himself. But obviously that was rectified by another show in which Lester Maddox came back, and obviously Dick Cavett walked off set and Lester Maddox made a joke and Dick Cavett came back. Here's hoping that more HBO documentaries continue to raise the bar. So in the end, folks, what I'm going to say about Ali and Cavett, The Tale of the Tapes, I'm sadly going to give this, I don't want to give it a very low rating, but I'm going to give this a Netflix ranking. It's currently out on HBO. So folks, Ali and Cavett, The Tale of the Tapes, have you seen this? What did you think? I'm on Twitter at MichaelRich2 for whatever reason. As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, enrich yourself with knowledge. I'll see you next time, folks. Yes, hooray.